It's time for another video of Real Yards, where viewers send me pictures of their yard and I send them my opinion on their landscaping. Today we've got a self-proclaimed boring ranch that needs help on a busy street, a small space in Ontario that needs some love, and an absolute bummer of a new utility box that just got plunked in the center of this otherwise lovely yard. You guys, look at this. They all want to know how they can make their front yards better, so let's get it. This email is from Patricia, native plant suggestions for boring ranch. Hi Lisa, I've been watching your videos on repeat trying to get some inspiration, but I'm stuck. I'm looking for some easy to care for native perennials that will add some color and interest to my yard. Well, thank you so much, Patricia. I think your home is lovely. It's not so boring, but yes, you definitely could use a lot more perennials, flowers, a garden in the front. That would really add some color and some interest to your yard. I see that you've already added a tree in the front. This is great. And this tree is probably going to grow really nice. You have these living room windows right here. So you're going to be able to look out over at that tree and see all the birds and wildlife that are going to be attracted to that. So that's a really great start. One thing I am noticing right away is that you've got these two windows and in the middle, there's just this blank wall there. A lot of people are kind of wondering, well, what do I put in this blank area to kind of make it look nice? And I would probably put a trellis there because if you look down a little bit, you're going to see these window wells. So, you're not going to be able to plant something necessarily like right in the window well and have it make sense. So what I would do is I would put a trellis there to see if you can find a trellis or some kind of structure that is going to kind of work around that window well, but then give you the height and it can lean up against the siding, not too close to it, but it can sort of lean up against there and you can put a vine, like maybe a flowering vine on there. My favorite is Lonicera sempervirens or coral honeysuckle. This is such a reliable flowering vine that has most of its blooms in like early May, June, and then it does continue to bloom throughout the summer. This is a native perennial that is very reliable from year to year. The hummingbirds love it. It's very, very easy to care for and it tolerates a little bit of dry conditions, which is nice because, that's close to the eaves of the house. You might not have like a ton of water there. So I would go ahead and do that. Now you can use any vine you want. We do have a native clematis, Clematis virginiana. Our native clematis is very aggressive. Okay, so that's something that you're really going to want to think about. It isn't really the first thing that I suggest, but it is native. If you're looking for a non-native alternative, there's plenty of clematis that would do really well in that area, especially if it gets some morning sun and afternoon shade. I think that clematis kind of like their roots to be in just a little bit of shade so that they're not in the blasting sun all day. You did say that you have some deer pressure. Deer pressure is really tough to deal with. We're all dealing with it. It can be a real challenge. So I'm going to try to suggest some plants that are a little bit deer resistant, but I have to say, you just never know what these deer are going to eat. If you have heavy deer pressure, you might have to spray with some kind of anti-deer spray while your plants are getting established. It's not my favorite thing, but just really depends on your situation. So let's start with a bee balm. Right under this window here, I would go ahead and put some red bee balm or Monarda didyma. This is a very minty tasting plant. We actually did a video where I made a tea out of it. My husband and I tried the tea.
Definitely has a smell.
He thought it was pretty gross. Like a fresh yard taste.
This is gross.
I thought it was okay. Regardless, it has a strong taste. So I'm hoping that the deer might leave it alone. It also grows in like a really big clump. So that kind of protects it a little bit. If you get some, deer browse on the outside, then at least on the inside, you're going to still have the flowers and the plant isn't going to be set back too much. On the other side, I would go ahead and put some purple coneflowers. While coneflowers are tasty to deer early in the season, once they have their flowers up, they have these really spiky seed heads. And usually deer kind of leave them alone once they get to that stage. So I would go ahead and put some purple coneflowers right there. And in front, of course, like some penstemon. Penstemon is a really good hardy plant. Butterfly weed is also great to kind of put in the front of a bed because it's kind of low. So they usually don't get as tall as 3 feet. They usually stay between 2 and 3 feet tall. Butterfly weed also in the milkweed family. So it doesn't tend to be the bunnies or the deer's favorite food, although who knows. I would definitely strategically place some butterfly weed in some clumps here. And in the front, I love to have Spirobolus. Spirobolus is pretty resistant to critter damage. There's really not a lot of bunnies or deer that like to eat this grass. It kind of has these little sharp edges and it's just not the tastiest grass. So I would put that in the front, and then hopefully that kind of provides a little bit of space to deter some critters that you might have. So that and the butterfly weed is going to be kind of your front border. I love using this as a border. And then behind that, I would go ahead and put some little blue stem. Little blue stem is such a beautiful grass. It's got like a blue tint to it. And then in the fall, you've got this beautiful orangish rainbow color. It's really, really pretty in the fall. Also pretty resistant to deer. These grasses are pretty tough. Even if something did munch on them, they really are resilient and they come back. And that would really fill that in nicely and give you some fall color. On the left over here, I'm realizing that I do want some more flowers for the fall. So in September, I do like to have goldenrod and asters together. So I would put some goldenrod fireworks right here, maybe a couple of clumps of them, maybe 2 or 3. This kind of goldenrod really doesn't spread aggressively. It's a very calm, clumping kind of goldenrod. And then in the front, I would put aromatic aster. Aromatic aster, might get nibbled on by the deer, but it is a really tough plant and it does grow kind of big. So I think it might be able to withstand some of that damage. And then, maybe put some more spirobolus on the end. So this way you have some different blooms for different times a year. And, you've got your vine that's going to intermittently flower throughout the summer. You've got your grasses there. And I'm hoping that this is going to give you something to start with so that you can have some success instead of having all of your flowers eaten by deer immediately. I'm not really an expert on deer damage because at my house, we live in a pretty urban area. We don't have a ton of deer, but I know it can be a challenge. So just hang in there, try to stay positive. And when the deer eat your plants, either spray or replace it with something else. Now let's take a look at the road here. I am seeing a couple of opportunities in the front. I see that you've got some juniper and then this like rocky edge of the road here that is kind of difficult to landscape. A lot of people ask me like, how do I landscape a slope or what do I do out by the street? I would go very simple here and I would probably add some sedges on the left because I really don't see a lot of vegetation at all. And I think Pennsylvania sedge would fill in really nicely around this tree. Just kind of work around where the roots are, find out where you have soil, and bring in some Pennsylvania sedge plugs. So you can see here just by adding a few sedges, like it just kind of brightens up the area and it makes it look more alive, a little bit more welcoming. So even though you have a tree and you've got these roots from the juniper, you can probably fit those sedges in here and there, and they will kind of spread where they want to. So that's going to be more of a shady area. And then as we go away from the tree, you're going to have a little bit more sun. So I would change the sedge that you use. On this side, maybe some Carex albicans, which Carex albicans can tolerate a little bit more sun and some dry conditions. So I would go ahead and plug some Carex albicans in here and then probably some creeping phlox. Creeping phlox does really well in sunny conditions where it's kind of dry, kind of difficult conditions. I've seen it really thrive in different places. So I would go ahead and plug in some creeping phlox here and there, and then add that Carex albicans. And then behind it, you're going to have a little bit more sun and a little bit of an opportunity for some flowers. So I would stick some black-eyed Susans right next to this juniper right here. Black-eyed Susans are so resilient and they're so hardy. They look gorgeous in June and July. I actually have some that are blooming just a little bit early now. It's July 1st. They're just getting started. You really can't go wrong with Black-eyed Susans. They look awesome and they are really tough. So I'm going to give you a little picture before and after. I hope this was helpful. Let's go ahead and move on to the next house. This is an email from Nancy. Nancy says she lives in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Beautiful. She says they bought the home 2 years ago and the previous owners were avid gardeners. So it looks like they had a mature garden that may be a little bit overgrown and she's trying to think of ways to make it look better. So yes, we've got a mature tree right here and a little bit of a path here. They do have this tree underplanted with some perennials. I'm not sure from the picture if I can identify what they are. From what I see, this picture really needs some defined borders. And that's going to make it look a lot more neat and tidy without having to change a whole lot of what's going on. So what I would do around these mailboxes is I would take a little half moon edger and I would edge around the mailboxes and then fill in with mulch in the places where it really needs a little bit of mulch. You can go ahead and straighten out the pathway here. I would weed the path and mulch around the path. And then let's take a look at the other side. I would do the same thing. I would just take an edger and just decide where the path is going to be. I think I see the path right here, and it just kind of goes up and around and curves here. So once you get that defined path, then it'll give you some direction and then say, okay, well, here's the grass side, and then here's the plants side. So then you can weed in the plants side, and you can decide how much space you have to add plants underneath the tree. Shade plants that will work well will probably be like Virginia bluebells, wild geranium, of course, different kinds of sedges, depending on how dry or wet the area is and how much sun it gets. There's always room for sedges, but I would definitely start with that edging, and then that is just really going to give you some clarity about how to handle the space. You also have an opportunity over here with this tree. If you want to do the edging around the tree, I would be very careful. I wouldn't take the half moon edger and just kind of edge around the tree, because you're going to end up cutting some roots that have gotten used to not having an edge there. So you could do maybe a little bit of edging, just be really careful, and you can fill it in with mulch. Make sure you keep the mulch away from the tree trunk. This tree looks like it's not very big, so you could probably still put some part sun plants there like black-eyed Susans or garden phlox, maybe some grasses. Once October, September comes around, you can throw some daffodil bulbs in there. It'll just give you a little bit more direction once you have those boundaries defined, and you're going to start to feel really good about your garden. The next email is from Joanne. Hi, Lisa. I love your channel. I am hoping you can help me out with our front garden. The house faces west. It's a tiny front yard, and the garden and lawn close to the house gets a lot of shade. The tree in the front is a red maple, and my husband tries to grow grass there every year. Lots of time and effort, but the tree soaks up most of the water. Yeah, it sure does. Maples really love water, and that's a beautiful tree. It can be difficult to grow grass underneath there. I would say probably negotiate in your household and decide where you want to have the grass and where you want to have plants. You can maybe start mulching around the tree, keeping the mulch away from the trunk, of course. You know, I do see that you have some creeping phlox here, which is actually doing pretty well considering it's in a little bit of shade and a lot of dry. So just mulch around that area. You don't want the mulch to be too high because you do already have the roots there, but a couple inches, 2-3 inches of mulch, it's going to break down and it's going to get smaller over time. I would just decide where you're going to put the plants. Now, of course, if it was me, if it was me, I would make this as big as possible because I don't want to have to worry about mowing around the tree. The mower is going to hit these roots. You know, the maples, they like to bring their roots right up to the surface. I don't want to bring that weed whacker over here. I would just go ahead and draw a big circle around this. And then I would put plants that tolerate dry shade. So what am I looking at? I'm looking at Jacob's ladder, Pennsylvania sedge, Virginia bluebells. And if you want an accent piece, I would put little clumps of shooting star. Dodecathion is such a beautiful shade plant that flowers in the spring. And it just kind of has this flower that just perks up and just blooms really, really fast. This is something you just want to dot throughout the garden. It's like these little surprises throughout the shade garden. Yeah, and I would fill this up with sedges right here. And this way you have lots of different textures throughout the season, because in most shade gardens, you're going to get most of your color and action in the spring. That's just how it is. If you have annuals, maybe you can get them to bloom throughout the summer, but in general, you're going to get a lot of color in the spring. And then the rest of the time, you're going to have foliage. So you want something that's going to have different textures. You could put some wild ginger in there for some big round leaves, and then contrast that with the sedges that kind of look like grass. Wild violets would also do well here. And then over here on this side, I would probably put some garden phlox just to see. I know you said it does get a lot of shade, and sometimes garden phlox can do well in the shade. And so I would take a chance on garden phlox and see how it does. There's always a chance that it's going to get leggy and it's not going to look good. Then you can pull it out and move it somewhere else. But I would try to give that a chance because it would be really nice to have a little bit of color in July. Now, if we're going closer to the house, I see that you already kind of have a garden set up here, just kind of needs a little bit of help. I would take these rocks that are sinking into the ground and I would remove them and kind of like level out the ground. If you have to add dirt, you can add dirt, and then just kind of take these rocks out, then purposefully place them in a way that's more decorative because they look a little bit random now. So you want to put them in little clumps so that they look like a cute decorative, like a fairy garden. And I would try that garden phlox again right here, because if it does succeed, it's going to look really, really pretty. And then the rest of the flowers, I would probably use shade plants like wild geranium geranium. Again, those shooting stars would look really pretty. If you can get your hands on some trillium, there's a couple different types of trillium. This one has a beautiful white flower. Those would look really nice around Easter time. I'm going to go ahead and put some wild ginger around here. Wild ginger looks so pretty, like within the rocks. It reminds me of a fairy garden with these just like big spade shaped leaves, like a little toadstool almost. And I would put some Pennsylvania sedge over here. And we also have an opportunity to kind of hide this rain barrel. Love that you have a rain barrel. This is a fantastic way to collect water on your property. And the plants really love it. Plants really love rainwater. They don't like my treated softened water as much as they like the water from the rain barrel. So I think that's awesome. But I would put like a little shrub right here, probably a chokeberry, Aronia melanocarpa. They do well in part shade. They're very easy to shape and trim. They don't overgrow and get too tall. If you put something like a viburnum there, it would probably do well, but it might just kind of overgrow the area and be a little bit hard to maintain. That. And then another thing I would do is I can see that you have a couple of hooks up here on the patio. So if you wanted to, you could put some hanging baskets up here. If you want something low maintenance that does well in the shade, you could always put a fern. It is hot everywhere in North America right now. Even in Ontario, I'm sure it's really hot for you guys. So just make sure that you water it regularly. Putting a fern or something, or some kind of vine that does well in the shade, that would really brighten up that area a lot. It's a really cute little patio. I love it. Let's go ahead and take a look at the before and after. Here's the before picture around the maple and after. That's going to be a fun project. Okay, the one that you've all been waiting for. Tabitha has written to me about an electrical box that got put in her yard. Hi, my name is Tabitha, and I'm in search of some ideas to help cover a large, ugly electrical box. I'm a beginner gardener and just considering landscaping now because of this box. You guys, look at this. Oh my God. Okay, I have lived in this home for 15 years, and last fall, the electrical company set this monstrosity in my front yard with no warning. I can't imagine living somewhere for 15 years and then all of a sudden somebody gives you this electrical box right in the middle. What are they even doing here? It's an eyesore. It makes me upset every time I see it. So since I'm stuck with it, I'm going to embrace it. She lives in Missouri and is open to having native plants. She says the house is tall, so there is a lot of shade in the front near the house. So I get that. By the time the sun kind of gets to this electrical box, you're going to be dealing with just a little bit more sunlight. I would go ahead and check exactly how many sun hours you get around this box. So that means like on a Sunday or some day when you're going to be home for most of the day, look at this box. And if the box is shaded by the house, mark that it's shaded, at 10 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, at 12 o'clock to see exactly how many hours you have. If you have 6 hours, you can put full sun plants here because that's what I want to do. You have a lovely yard. People who work on these electrical boxes need to access the box. So occasionally, if they have to do work on it, they are going to trample your flowers. So you're just going to have to be okay with that. I'm kind of okay with doing stuff like that. I have a utility easement in the front of my house where there's a ditch. I know that at any time the city can dig up that ditch and do maintenance, and I'm not going to cry about it because I knew ahead of time. And if they dig it up, that's the city property. So I take that risk and I really don't mind. They haven't had to dig it up too many times, just the once. But it's fine. It's just plants. We have native plants and they can be divided all the time. So whatever. The other thing that you want to do is you don't want to obscure this number too much because they do have to drive around and kind of look at these numbers to just make sure that they're accessible. I don't know what they do, but they do important work where they're going to need access to this number. So I wouldn't hide it completely so that it's completely obscured because I don't want to make a hassle for these workers. At the same time, they couldn't even make the box green. So I made a compromise, which is that we're going to put grasses and tall plants on the right side of this box so that when you kind of come up to the house, your eye is drawn to the flowers and to the grasses, and you're looking at that. You're not really looking at the box. And then on the left side of the box, I'm going to put low flowers that aren't going to interfere with the maintenance of the box. Also, maybe that's what I would do. The truth about this is that you will have to call the electrical company and ask them specifically if they have rules around planting around the boxes and obscuring the boxes. Just figure out what their rules are because you don't want to get in trouble with the electrical company or with the city or anything like that. Always check with them first because obviously I'm not the one that's going to be in trouble. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some of my favorite tall grasses, which is Panicum virgatum, Northwind panicum. I'm going to put some of that a little bit behind the box, and then that will provide a nice green backdrop for some plants in the front where I would put some Heliopsis helianthoides. This is also known as false sunflower. You can usually get one of these at any of your local garden centers that has a lot of perennials. If you can't get the native one, there is another one called Tuscan Sun, and there's another one called this, and they're a little bit shorter, but if you can, I would get the native one because my native one is probably 4 or 5 feet tall. And that's what I want. I want something tall on this side so that we have like a tall grass and some tall flowers to just kind of draw your eye away from this electrical box. And then in the front, I would go ahead and put some little blue stem. Now, one of the reasons I would do that is because little blue stem is tough. If some workers come and trample the little blue stem, I am not going to be sad because the little blue stem is strong. It'll come back. You can burn it to the ground and it'll just come back the next year. So I'm not really worried about little blue stem. So we're just kind of starting to provide a little bit of a barrier here, with the eye as you approach the home. And then in front of that, I would put black-eyed Susans, big showstopper, like eye-catching black-eyed Susans. The black-eyed Susans put on a really big show in July and August. They're going to look great. On the left of the black-eyed Susans here, I would put some Penstemon digitalis, beautiful white flowers, very hardy plant, and it's not that tall. This way, we're not totally obscuring the box if they do kind of just like let you plant around this. And then on the other side of the box, I would put something low. I was thinking maybe a Coreopsis Zagreb. So this is a threadleaf Coreopsis that is very low to the ground, very tightly packed and bushy. This way it gives you some texture. It gives you flowers on and off for the season, but it's not a big like prairie grass or prairie flowers. It's not tall. And so this way it just kind of shows that you're trying to make it easily accessible while you're still decorating your lawn. I think that this is totally reasonable. Obviously, you're going to have to ask them if they think it's reasonable. You keep that serial number visible. You don't completely hide it, but you definitely draw the eye away from the eyesore. The other thing you're going to want to do is in the background, you're going to want to put some more plants over there so that that draws your eye even farther from the box. I see that you have an opportunity to have a little bit more garden in the front here. I see you have some blocks here. I would think about extending this front garden just a little bit more and giving yourself an extra 4 feet of garden in the front. Maybe that'll be a little bit further from the house, so that'll give you more opportunities for flowers because you're going to have a little bit more sun further away from the house than you are close to the house. Close to the house, it looks like if that's the north side, you are going to be using full shade plants there. So we're talking wild ginger, you might have hostas there already. And then once you have some flowers there, that is going to make you feel a lot better about your yard. Think about the fact that you don't have a lot of flowery landscaping in the front. And then all of a sudden you have this big box and it's just plunked down there and it just feels like that's the only thing in the front yard now. So what you want to do is you want to add more things, and that way the box won't be the only thing there. It'll just be one of many things. I think people won't notice. Of course, you're always going to notice it, but when those flowers start blooming, you're going to start feeling a lot better about this. This is definitely something that's doable. Obviously, be extremely careful when you dig around here. I wouldn't use any power tools, only hand tools. And, call before you dig, have them mark it and make sure that, it's safe for you to plant around here. I think that you can definitely do this. You just have to make sure that you call them ahead of time and that you use a lot of caution when you're doing the install. Thank you so much for sending this in. You're not alone. You're not the only one with this problem. I have a really cool picture that was sent in, which is a before and after picture of a residential woodland. And this is the before picture, and here's the after. So we have a huge mayapple patch back here. And then this is some, I think, black cohosh. It looks really beautiful. This is really going to be a lot more beneficial to wildlife. And then here's another before and after. Here's the before, and then here's after with these beautiful hay-scented ferns. If you have a woodland and you're not sure what to put there, it looks like these hay-scented ferns spread really, really nicely. And we've got a flowering shrub right here. This is just a really beautiful example of when you have shade, there's really a lot that you can do. And if you have a big area, you can fill it with ferns. Ostrich fern will fill up the whole area. Hay-scented fern, cinnamon fern, I think is also pretty aggressive. It looks beautiful. They also really do you a favor because I don't see a lot of weeds in here. It doesn't mean that they don't have to go through and weed ever, but these ferns are keeping down the weed situation. When you have nothing planted in an area, you're going to grow weeds because Mother Nature is very shy. She likes to cover up, and she will cover up with whatever plants are available. And so she just pulls the easiest plants and then covers up with those. And it's usually weeds, which is fine for her, but not always fine for us. So that's why I love covering the ground with sedges and ferns. This is really a beautiful thing that she's done with her property. If you want to be on the show, send your pictures to info-likesplants@gmail.com. I'll try to include your property. Make sure your photos are in landscape and let me know in the email that I have permission to use them in the show. With all these ideas, I hope you're inspired to get planting soon. So let's get it.